So UFC 14 Showdown took place on July 27th, 1997, and it's another one for Birmingham, Alabama. This is one of the only places that we can actually get the UFC sanctioned in 1997. This time we're at the Boutwell Auditorium, not the Fair Park Arena, and we can literally only have UFC cards in the South. The last events have literally only been in either Alabama or Georgia. We are in deep shit as a promotion at this point. But we open up with a video package where we promo Maurice Smith and Mark Coleman. We then run some propaganda for the state of Alabama. Nothing you haven't seen before. They run out of stuff to say when they visit the same places every single time. But we come out of that. We come out to the arena sold out. 4,800 people in attendance. A nice quote from Bear here. And we see Bruce Beck at the desk, who runs down the best main event we have ever seen in UFC. And he says that this is the ultimate striker versus grappler matchup, which, as it happens, is the sort of essence of what UFC was originally. Guys were specialising in a discipline and proving that their discipline was superior to the opponent. We've sort of lost that along the way. Like where in modern day UFC, every athlete just trains everything. But that's a story for another time. Off the soapbox, I suppose. Jeff Blatnick joins us at the desk here in a matching shirt. I wonder if this was coordinated, or they both just enjoy Ralph Lauren and neither bought a spare shirt. That's just like, it makes me think it must be roasting in the arena, because these guys are normally in suits, so they must have complained about that and they said, right, okay, just wear the polo shirts. But Jeff Blatnick talks about our competitors, special focus on Mark Kerr. That might happen, by the way, here. That getting Kerr and Coleman confused might not be the only time it happens, but some may know him as the Smashing Machine. We have a name change here, as the lightweight tournament has been renamed to the middleweight tournament. The limits are still the same, under 199 for middleweight and over 200 for heavyweight. And fuck me, Joe Moreira's back. You'll remember he engaged in a non-contact fight with Paul Varlins at UFC 8. And Joe Rogan is here saying that everyone is excited about the debuting wrestlers Kerr and Kevin Jackson. And then just lies when he says that everybody's looking forward to the return of Joe Moreira. We are not, okay? We are not looking forward to the return of Joe Moreira. We run through the rules, as always, the ways to win, and fucking hell, we need to watch this guy first. Oh boy. No respite for this bullshit. He takes on, oh my god, Yuri Volin, an alleged grappler who trains in boxing shorts and throws hands, okay? I'm not even asking questions. They then pull up his name that calls him a boxer. I'll just assume that Bruce Beck misspoke when he called him a grappler. Then Jeff Blatnick says this guy has absolutely no ground skill whatsoever. Believe me, we will see it. So here comes Joe Moreira, jiu-jitsu guy, obviously a straight pussy. So you know how this goes. Like, the reason he couldn't take down Varlins is because he's so big, and instead he just chose to like circle round Varlins and make no contact. So now these guys are the same size. I'm willing to bet how this goes. Moreira is going to take him down, lie on top for 15. This is going straight to decision. Bruce Buffer does the intros, says this guy's fighting out of Huntington Beach, California. No, he fucking isn't. Okay? Huntington Beach is the home of Tank Abbott, T. Ortiz, and Chemo. Legends of the game. Huntington Beach has to be protected and reserved for these types of great warriors. No access for the likes of a Joe Moreira who circles making no contact, completely bitch made. Fuck this guy. Okay? And what do you know? The fight starts, Joe Moreira circles, then shoots, gets the takedown on this guy with absolutely no ground skills. Moreira's in mount, makes no attempt to create distance and land shots. He's actually holding on to Yuri on the bottom. This guy is such a pussy. The crowd start booing, and at this point the audio is all fucked up because the crowd goes from booing to silent. They turn up to a cheer before then going back to silent, all in the space of a few seconds. I have no idea what's going on with that. The crowd then starts booing again, and this time Bruce Beck has to acknowledge it, saying, well, this is just Joe Moreira's game, and I don't know why people are booing. And this is the kind of shit that makes me hate commentary. Like, this was the problem when Hoist Gracie was here, because they can't just say what's in front of them and be honest when this shit is shit, because everyone's booing because this guy hasn't even tried to move for a finish the entire fight. I don't actually believe this, but I might do a video talking about the history of like the name MMA and its impact on UFC, and it almost being the sole reason for its existence and its ability to get sanctioned and hold events. I might put that in a video of its own. For the first time in UFC history, the phrase mixed martial arts has just been used in this absolute dumpster fire matchup. MMA history was made in this fucking shit show of a fight. Blatnick says, talking about Yuri here, this man has 273 boxing matches. He's an incredible boxer, but it's not enough in a mixed martial arts competition. So there's some history for you folks, and it's in the middle of this fucking fight between these two, man. I can't believe it. We're nearly 10 minutes into this thing. Big John finally stands these two up with 2 minutes left of the round. Jesus Christ. Back up, back down. Did I not bet that this would happen? Like, Joe Moreira is a disgrace to the sport, a disgrace to his family, a disgrace to his country. Vitor Belfort is trying to fix the damage done to the Brazilian reputation that people like you and Hoist Gracie have done. Who has tried his best, but he's gone already. Vitor is seemingly our only hope for the country of Brazil, and at least he can look himself in the mirror when he gets up in the morning, because he's not doing this shit. They restart for overtime, and the crowd boo, by the way, for the restart. They don't want to see any more of this, and I'll just say now, this is the first event, seeing as we've got time here, nothing else is happening, I'll say this. This is the first time where all the fighters are actually required to wear the traditional MMA gloves, so there's a historic note for this event. Not that these two used them, but anyways. Fuck this fight, fuck Joe Moreira, he wins unanimous decision, and I hope he pays for it every single day of his life. Over half an hour into this thing, and there's only one fight. Only one fight. I am about to go elbow to wrist on this thing already. Jesus fucking hell. What would become a regular feature throughout the night, and at least at our last event at UFC 13, but particularly tonight at UFC 14, stalling. A whole lot of nothing happening in between these fights. So long breaks are anticipated between every single matchup. But we gear up for our second middleweight semi-final, Todd Butler versus Kevin Jackson. Kevin Jackson is an Olympic gold medalist, multiple-time world champion. You name it, he's done it. Very good wrestler. And he's up against Todd Butler. So Kevin Jackson with pretty interesting shorts here, like fucking bicycle short length, but like half and half design. But not like traditional half and half. Like I don't even know what, you can see them yourself, they're coming up in a second, but interesting shorts from Kevin Jackson. The fight starts, Kevin looks very upright, like he's got a fucking pole shoved up his arse. They clinch against the fence. Kevin Jackson gets the takedown, takes the back, lands some very powerful punches to the back of the head, immediate concussion. And Jackson daps him up on the way to the middleweight final. Good for him. Very impressive victory here from Jackson. He has a nice interview with Joe Rogan after the fact as well. Shout out to the family back in Arizona. And like Olympic gold medalist, I feel like we've seen this with Mark Schultz. Was it Mark Schultz? See when you get these Olympians in here, just very, very dominant wrestlers, because nobody else really has that level in their discipline. To like, we've seen karate guys, we've seen judo, like nobody anywhere near Olympic level. The only Olympic level fighters we've had are the wrestlers. They come in, they always just kill it, just destroy their opponent, which, I mean, like, fair enough. But we then get to see Mark Coleman in the back, because again, we can't just go from fight to fight. We need to actually stall and drag this thing out for as long as humanly possible. We have the same amount of fights we used to. We still have If you just take the 2 tournaments, merge them into one, we still start with 8 guys who then need to like break that down into then the remaining 4 people with no final. Look at this guy right here in the brown suit on the left. This guy is like the fucking original Ali Abdulaziz. I swear to God, he is everybody's manager. How fucking fat are this guy's pockets ripping off all these fighters? I don't get it. But back to what I was saying. How are these events so much longer than the original ones, even though there's one less fight on all the cards? Like, okay, you ram it with filler to take it to 2 hours. Why do you need to add on the extra half hour where nothing is happening? And I'll actually come on to this point multiple times throughout the video, but at one point in particular, it genuinely pisses me off. But we get Maurice Smith's propaganda basically running through his workout and then shows him fucking people up basically, and then him on UFC commentary, which we never actually seen before. I don't know how they get these clips. Like, if we never see it, because the arena's like still full, so I don't get that. But Smith says Coleman's one-dimensional. Smith says he'll stand with Coleman or wrestle with him. It doesn't really matter. But we've made it to the heavyweight tournament where the Smashing Machine Mark Kerr takes on Steiny, we'll just call him, because I don't want to get into the Stein type thing. I don't get it. We'll just call him Steiny, who we've seen being beaten by Mark Coleman before, so we'll decide to give him to Mark Coleman's friend, Mark Kerr. So Kerr makes his pre-fight comments where he contrasts and compares flashlights and laser beams before we then make it to the octagon. Commentary reference his nickname, the Smashing Machine, from his Vale Tudo days in Brazil, where he beat some guys that we've seen before. Paul Varlins, who's alright, and Fabio Gurgel, who is shit. So we'll see what happens here. Fight starts. Kerr has been dipping into the steroid bag of Mark Coleman by the looks of it, but I'm sure you'll already know. I feel like after Smash Machine came out in the Joe Rogan interview, Lionel Rivera done a documentary style video on him as well. People are probably familiar with the story of Mark Kerr and the steroid use, so I'll just leave it alone for the time being. Coleman gets the takedown and literally smashes Steiny to a finish. They hug and shake. Mark Kerr has made it to the heavyweight tournament final. A nice out-of-breath interview with Joe Rogan before Joe tells us that Joe Moreira is out of the middleweight final. Thank God. My prayers have been answered. We will have to go to an alternate. See that right there? That right there is the first part of paying every day for it, folks. Boom. That performance merited the concussion that Joe Moreira had. I don't know how he got it. I don't even care how he got it. He got it, and just get him out of this company and never let him back in. And so Strickland beat Chappelle in the middleweight alternate matchup. I don't know why we aren't moving like matchup into another matchup like we used to at the previous events. I said this at the end of the last review, UFC 13. I've already spoke about it in this video. Like, filling the card up with just so much promo bullshit you don't care about. Like, I have looked up the times for the fights here, right? And this is moving ahead. This is in, like, every single televised match that get put out on here, 45 minutes of televised fights. This show is 2.5 hours long. That is fucking outrageous. Like, you do the math on how much pointless shit is getting stuffed into this thing. Next up, we have Brian Johnson returning, you know, kind of 50-50-ish record. He's taking on Dan Bobish. And Brian Johnson is back. They tell us that he's only lost to the best in UFC, which is true. But then again, like, who did he ever really beat? And I get that, like, he's not the worst guy ever, but the talent is starting to get a little bit more, maybe not better is the word, more consistent. There's not so much pure Drek of Drek, never trained before. But they're, like, again, Brian Johnson, who did he ever beat? There comes a point where you need to, like, start seeing a guy win. They start off swinging uncontrollably. This looks a little like a bar fight before Bobish rocks Johnson with some hands before, like, it's just knocking down Johnson against the fence. And All you hear at this point from Bobish's corner, did I say knockdown? I meant takedown, sorry. All you hear from Bobish's corner here after the takedown, after he like rocked him on the feet, hit him hard, is keep your position, Dan. This is the kind of shit we need to rid from the sport. And I get it, this is a 30 plus year review, but you start researching Bobish and realise that he's teammates with Severn and Shamrock. So this actually makes a lot of sense why the corner would be screaming some bullshit like that. There was some sort of choke, neck crank against the cage here. This fight was shit. I can't dress this up any other way. The corner literally pissed me off so much because he had Johnson up against the fence, dead to rights, hurt him on the feet, had him stuffed up against the cage, just beating him. And instead of finishing the fight, instead of going for that, they're screaming at him, hold your position, hold your position. Like, this guy's already been finished on the ground, like, every single time he's fought. Again, we ran through the list, like, Severn, Coleman, who else the fuck beat Johnson? It doesn't matter at this point, but, like, I hate that people are like this, where, like, the finish is right there for you and you just don't take it. Absolutely infuriating. He does get it done, but almost out of, like, you know, oh, I just so happened to trip, stumble and fall into the finish. I didn't actually truly go for it. I just pressed him up against the cage and Johnson just fucking gave up. Again, absolutely infuriating. We get the UFC flashback, Coleman versus Fry, which was a good fight, and then even more propaganda for Mark Coleman. I'm not even watching these anymore. This is fucking ridiculous. Telling us shit we can see with our own eyes just to stall and fill time. They are literally using clips from the same interview he had before the Dan Severn fight 2 events ago. Fucking rotten. Fit your highlights and clips in at the start in that video package, not here. Keep moving with the action. Joe Moreira has an interview where he says the doctor told him he can't fight, which is true. Moreira tells us he feels fine, which might also be true. He says he doesn't even feel concussed, just that he's regularly just dumb as fuck. But he wants to fight, which might be true. But he says that he can't fight, which again is true. And I would genuinely love to live in a world where UFC saw that absolute disgrace of a fight and told the doctor, you are giving this guy a concussion and telling him he can't fight. I don't give a fuck if he's healthy. If he can go, he's not going. And we are not watching that piece of shit ever again. So we then see the alternate bout where Strickland beats Chappelle. And if you think I'm watching this, why don't you go fuck yourself? Strickland wins with a choke, hits him after the bell, steps on him on the way up. This guy's a pussy. I hope he gets smoked. But see, whilst this happens on the screen, and this is what I'm actually, the point of this is and what I'm getting at, this is filled up with so much filler for the person at home watching it. You need to remember, right, 45 minutes of action in a 2.5 hour event. The audience is in the arena this whole time. All of them have to sit there in the dark with their thumbs up their arse whilst they stockpile a load of filler into these shows of stuff that we've already seen. Like, and whilst nothing is happening in front of the actual audience that paid for a ticket to be there, they're sitting in the dark for nearly 2 full hours, like, with nothing happening. Disgraceful. Finally, we get to the middleweight final. Strickland versus Jackson. Strickland comes out. Finally, just about we get there, in a De Pasquale shirt. De Pasquale's a judge. How can you be at the judge's training school or the fucking fight camp where the judge is the fucking namesake and, like, be at this event fighting where the coach is the judge? Mate, fuck this guy. Fuck Strickland. Thank God, when the fight starts, Jackson instantly gets the takedown and the back, similarly to the first fight. He goes between the choke and strikes, back to the choke, And he gets the win. Strickland taps, which is hilarious. And all of Team Jackson celebrate on top of Strickland in Strickland's corner, which is also hilarious and thoroughly deserved. Jackson says that he wants to fight the toughest middleweights, which he will. We'll get there. And he then names Joe Moreira. Those two things, the toughest middleweights and Joe Moreira, are not the same. He also names Guy Mezger, and whilst that fight would happen, no, that fight would not happen, sorry, he would fight one of his Lions Den teammates, Jerry Bolander, later down the road. He gets his medal from Art Davey, the commissioner, and Bob Marowitz, the owner, says some nice things about him, and they move on. But I will say this, Kevin Jackson speaks very well, and yeah, good for him. Nice win. Impressive, very impressive. So we leave that fight and we go to, you guessed it, more propaganda after we hit up the commentary desk, of course, because we need to rip this thing for all that it's worth. So we then get the propaganda video looking at all the wrestlers in UFC. We're literally making these videos about fucking anything. We had one at the last event saying the boys from Brazil. The fuck are we doing here? After that, we then get highlights from shit we've already seen on this event. We've sat here this entire time. We've seen everything. Why? In the context of 1997, we bought the pay-per-view already. Why are we watching highlights of the stuff that we just watched? We've seen all of this. Infuriating. Again, just not great. Not great. Onward. Mark Kerr versus Dan Bobish. Before the fight, we introduced some Kazakhstani guy. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name. Bruce Buffer announces it in an echoey building. They didn't actually put up a graphic for him or give me a name to read. It was literally just Bruce Buffer, screaming his name into the mic in a echoey building. But he said that we hope to bring the UFC to Kazakhstan. Now, there's a trivia question for you. How long was it before they managed that one? So the fight begins. Coleman has a few leg kicks before taking down Bobish. They talk about Bobish almost being an NFL athlete. So these are two big guys, but athletic big guys. And that's very refreshing considering what we have to watch in modern day heavyweight. But Kerr switches from side control to mount. Kerr actually gets the choke here. And the win. The Smashing Machine, graduate of the Hammer House, wins his very first heavyweight tournament. And as Mark Kerr flexes his freakish physique, Jeff Blatnick with possibly quote of the night, and I include mentioning mixed martial arts for the first time, this is quote of the night. Jeff Blatnick says he's a monster. He's really physically developed into a solid 250 pounder. And now tell me, Jeff, how did he manage that? The totally natty Mark Kerr develops into a solid 250 pounder. How did he do that, Jeff? I wonder. The mind boggles. Joe Rogan interviews Mark Kerr, who speaks very well. Again, he's barely out of breath in this interview, which, I mean, is strange, but he is genuinely, soft-spoken, respectful. You just don't imagine that looking at this guy, just because of how fucking massive he is. But it's the same thing with Mark Coleman when he gets interviewed. I've spoke about this before as well. Don Fry, even Tank Abbott, Chemo, Goodridge, Severn, Shamrock, all these guys, what is up with that? Why are all these guys who are absolute killers whilst being the most polite and well-mannered people when they speak? I don't understand. We then run down heavyweight rankings, by the way, next. We don't go to the fight, of course. We run down heavyweight rankings. They're still holding out hope that Don Fry will return to the octagon. This event is in July. They say hopefully he'll be back in January. He won't be back in January. But he's number 1. Vitor Belfort, number 2. Number 3, Marco Ruas. They say we hope to see him back. He's currently in negotiations with UFC. And then number 4 is Maurice Smith. And then number 5 is Dan Severn. Who the fuck made these rankings? Dan Severn is a fucking Triple Crown champion, just lost the undisputed fight between the Super Fight title and the Ultimate tournament. belt. Like, he was almost just the first heavyweight champion, but okay, whatever. They say that they're trying to make Severn versus Vitor for the October card, which is UFC 15 Collision Course. More on that in the next review, which, funnily enough, won't be on UFC. And so finally, mercifully, the time has arrived for the UFC heavyweight title fight, Maurice Smith versus Mark Coleman. Commentary tells us that Maurice Smith has never lost a title fight before. And we hear from Maurice Smith, who says that Coleman punches like a girl and he might have power, but he has no technique. This was actually quite a funny pre-fight interview. But again, I have no problem with the pre-fight comments. Like, that's not the issue here. The issue is when you just stuff filler content of stuff that's meaningless that we've already seen before in between all these fights. That's what pisses me off. So Coleman then takes that personally. He says that I can shoot from further away than he can kick and fancies a grappler's chances against a striker. But we're about to find out. Bruce Buffer did it again. Does the introductions, and here we go. Seconds into the fight, Coleman gets the takedown and just slams headbutts. Just spams them over and over again. Follows up with the hands, and we're stuck. We are in the guard here, which is a staple of these super fights, staple of these title fights. We're stuck here in the guard for a minute or 5. Maurice is able to land some shots from the bottom. Nothing really significant landing, but he is still hitting shots. The shots from Coleman have really dried up. And besides that sort of initial burst he had at the start of the fight, we're around the 5-minute mark and there hasn't been any headbutts from Coleman, any real strikes of note. The best shots were honestly some of the elbows that Smith was throwing from the bottom, which is not really what you expect having watched Coleman's previous fights. But at the 5-minute mark, Coleman passes guard finally to side control. Maurice panics, turns over, just giving his back to Coleman. Horrible decision. Coleman then looks for the choke before Maurice quickly then turns back over to lay on his back. But Coleman's now in mount. He starts dropping some bombs on Maurice, who stays composed under fire, to be honest. He does well. But then when the punches stop, he then gives up his back again, straight into the fucking Anthony Smith's favourite position, before we then move back into half guard. It's kind of frantic, but slow-paced frantic. It's so weird. I can't describe it any other way than that. The crowd starts actually chanting for Maurice Smith, which I was shocked at. I thought Coleman would have been their guy just because he's been here before and he's been pretty dominant. But that might honestly work against him. Like, when you win a lot, people just then kind of want to see you lose. But Coleman then looks for the same neck crank that he's beaten guys like Severn with, although it looks like he's moving in for an arm triangle. It allows Smith to actually escape and get back to the feet. Coleman shoots, doesn't get it, and Smith lands a high kick. Coleman is getting back to his feet now. I think this is perfectly legal because Coleman's knee isn't on the ground. He is like 2 feet firmly planted. This is perfectly legal to me. I don't know if you can tell in the photo there, but Coleman's knee is definitely off the ground. The kick is 100% legal. And Mark Coleman, to be fair to him, just eats it. He then has like a delayed reaction, as though only after the fight gets separated by Big John, he then acts as though, oh wow, that actually really hurt. But Big John steps in, breaks up the fight, and says to Smith that was an illegal strike. He separates both fighters back to their corner. I thought that it looked good, to be honest. Bruce Beck says, oh, that was close, and Jeff Blatnick agrees with him. So they are both looking at that thinking, I think he was actually standing. So, I mean, I don't think they wanted to go completely against the referee's call, but I'm with the commentators here. Like, they are definitely thinking that was a legal strike. The fight then restarts. Coleman doesn't even leave his corner. Like, he is so gassed. Maurice Smith lands some leg kicks, unnecessarily goes for the high kick, and then Coleman just easily ducks, gets the takedown, and we're back to half guard, where Smith again honestly lands the better shots here from the bottom. And Coleman transitions from guard to side control. We go back to half guard as the crowd chant again for Maurice. Big John screams, keep it working. Coleman attempts the neck crank and Maurice reverses it and is able to get back to his feet. I am shocked at how well he's doing. And Maurice lands a nice kick on the feet. Nice right hand with 30 seconds left to go of regulation. Mark Coleman looks like he's about to die, right? Before we get into our 3-minute overtime, he looks finished already. Maurice, like, to this point, has landed the more damaging strikes, however few of them, whilst Coleman has had all the control time on the ground. So it just kind of depends what the judges value here. I personally would give it to Maurice, but I mean, you never know. Coleman looks like his stomach is about to fall out of his arsehole. Just absolute death. He is completely fucked. Cannot stop looking at the clock as Maurice Smith just throws more leg kicks. This has to feel like an eternity for Mark Coleman in there. Coleman shoots and misses, and now Maurice is scared to throw kicks, but like he just bides his time, sits back before throwing this combo 2-2-1-2 high kick, and Coleman just stands there and like hands on his knees. He can't even breathe. Maurice now starts throwing leg kicks, and you can feel the tide turn in the fight. It's amazing, and he's just staying at range. So Coleman has a further distance to shoot, making the takedown more difficult. He knows he's landed the better strikes. He has had the bigger moments, and he's probably up now in the judge's mind, heading into the final period of overtime. Coleman again, like modern day heavyweight style, stands there, hands on knees, completely fucked, can't breathe, no cardio. Maurice Smith, when we seen this against Don Fry, like his cardio is so fucked, but Maurice Smith is landing more kicks. Big John stops the fight at first glance for literally no reason, just letting Coleman get his breath back, but after you rewatch it, he stopped the fight because the straps on Smith's gloves had come undone, so he's fixing that, and then the lights in the arena just turn off or down. I have no idea what happened. The lighting is just all fucked up. Commentary says that the decision will likely go to Maurice Smith as more of the lights turn off, and that is the end of the fight. It goes the distance, 15 minutes of regulation, 2 3-minute overtimes, and it is time for the official decision, as the lights are fucking off at this point. I don't know how half the lights are turning off and some of them are still on. I don't know if it's literally the emergency lights in the arena that are still on, and like the main power source, like the lights just above the octagon, are turned off. But it's weird because in some angles it looks okay, and in other angles it looks pitch black. I have no idea what's going on with that. But again, look, time for the official decision. Your winner and new undisputed UFC heavyweight champion of the world, Maurice Smith. And this is one of the biggest upsets in UFC to this point. At least Joe Rogan thinks so. And I'd probably agree. They thought that Mark Coleman would just take down and strike, or just take down this striker and finish him. But Smith had been training with Frank Shamrock, and he wasn't completely useless on the ground. He didn't really use any offensive ground game from the top, but he didn't have to. And it wouldn't have been smart for him at all to do that. All he needed to do was know how to survive and then be able to stand back up, and he did that very, very well. So Joe asked Maurice about the kick, whether Coleman was standing up or if he was grounded for the kick, of course. Smith says he couldn't tell, maybe he was down. Smith thought that he was up. Smith actually, again, he speaks really well here, doesn't even sound out of breath. And when you compare that to Mark Coleman, who looked like he was at death's door, is just insane. Maurice gets his belt from Mark Davey. He says that he's been trying to get a deal done since UFC 6, which I think would have been interesting to have seen him before this point. But Maurice thanks Lions Den and Frank Shamrock, and that draws this event to a close. Now, honestly, in recapping this event, let's start with the positives. Kevin Jackson, really good, really impressed, and I hope we get to see him back. I'm sure that we will. Mark Kerr, also impressive. I know that we will get to see him back, and the main event, whilst tedious at points because Coleman couldn't move, was still a spectacle just because of the contrasting styles. It felt like a true UFC fight where we have these two complete specialists in their own world coming together and fighting. Like it's the true essence of what this sport was, and the main event captured that. And so if you're going to go back and watch anything from this event, I would say you could watch the 2.5 minutes of Kevin Jackson, you could watch the 4 minutes of Mark Kerr, and if you're a real hardcore, you can watch the main event, which just sort of encapsulates the initial idea of UFC, which was all about, you know, specialists against each other to find out who the best is. Now, the remaining, 2.5 plus the 4 plus 21 is 27.5 minutes. Subtract the subtract the 2 hours and 37 minutes. That means the remaining 2 hours, 9 minutes and 30 seconds of this event was complete shit. Now, not worth your time watching. Joe Moreira should be put on trial for war crimes and espionage. Seriously, get this guy so far to fuck. I had to look up and see if he comes back to UFC. He doesn't. Thank God. But that's almost not good enough. Besides that, the constant filler, constant propaganda, constant interruptions and distractions between the fights that, like, just aren't necessary and not only don't add anything but actively harm the enjoyment of the viewer. I hated most of this. Between these last two events, it's not been good. So thankfully we get a respite from this promotion, because now the time has finally arrived where the next time you see a retro review hit your sub box, it's going to be Pride FC. So the time is upon us for Pride 1, the inaugural event for Pride Fighting Championship. I cannot wait, because UFC is really pissing me off right now. But for the UFC fans out there, don't worry, because the name Gracie is present on Pride 1 alongside the likes of Oleg Taktarov, UFC 6 champion, who takes on the UFC 8 runner-up Gary Goodridge. Not only that, we have Dan Severn making his return to MMA. Some controversy there, which we will discuss. And he is taking on the one, the only Hawaiian fighting legend, Kimo. All of that and more, as Bash Rutten is on the call commentating on the event. It is sure to be a good one. Like this video, comment your own thoughts on the review, make sure to hit subscribe, and don't miss out on our visit to Japan before the UFC makes it there. So hit the notify bell, stay up to date with the content as it drops. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all later.